Masked agents arrested yet another Democratic elected official without explaining why, and Donald Trump is threatening to plunge the U.S. into another disastrous war in the Middle East. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. As you might recall, when he was running for president, Trump claimed he would deport violent criminals.
We got to get the criminals out first.
And we're going to start with violent criminals, and we're going to start then with criminals. We have to get all of these criminals, these murderers and drug dealers and everything. We're getting them out.
Yeah, let's get rid of the murderers and the drug dealers. And while we're at it, can we at least talk to whoever's always texting me that they found my resume online and want to offer me $25 an hour to work from home? Yeah, I just want to find out if it's a scam, because if it's not a scam, I'm going to reply today and say yes. Think I want to be here talking about the end of American democracy? I want to be at home in my pajamas, fielding customer service calls while I play Mario Kart World. Anyway, Trump lied. Less than 10% of immigrants taken into custody since October, which includes time under Joe Biden as well, have serious criminal convictions. Instead, Trump is doing stuff like this.
Masked officers descended on courthouses across the country this week and arrested stunned immigrants showing up for scheduled immigration hearings.
Stephen Miller is screaming at agents, "What do you mean you're going after criminals? Why aren't you at Home Depot? Why aren't you at 7-Eleven?"
These are only a few of the reported raids at Home Depots all across Southern California.
Several federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security showed up at 2 elementary schools this week demanding to talk to students.
A community in shock after a local high school student is suddenly detained by ICE.
We are seeing reports on immigration agents raiding farm fields and packing facilities in Central California. This video appearing to show immigration agents chasing at least one agriculture worker through a field.
I'm sorry, but the only time a federal agent should be chasing anyone through a field is if they're trying to arrest the ghost of Shoeless Joe Jackson for betting on baseball. That's right, Joe. We take gambling very seriously. What's that? Sports gambling is super popular now, and Shoeless Joe Jackson is the new spokesperson for DraftKings. Use promo code Black Sox? All right. The courthouse arrests are especially cruel. These are people who are trying to do the right thing. They're showing up for scheduled appointments and complying with the law, and then they're being ambushed. And now the ICE dragnet is sweeping up elected officials.
A New York City comptroller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander arrested by ICE. Now, here's what we can tell you. This happened at an immigration court hearing in Lower Manhattan as he was trying to accompany a person out of a courtroom.
Do you have a judicial warrant? Can I see the judicial warrant? I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
I'm sorry, but no elected official should ever be treated like this unless that elected official is Mayor Humdinger, because I have kids and I'm very familiar with his crimes. You really thought you could replace the L train with a roller coaster and get away with it, Humdinger? You're going to Guantanamo, buddy. And guess who I would like to join him in Gitmo? The rest of the Paw Patrol characters, because they suck and I hate watching them. The administration, yeah, that's one thing we can all agree on. The administration said Lander was arrested for assaulting law enforcement and impeding a federal officer, which is an absurd lie. We can all see the video. All he did was ask to see a warrant, which is a basic thing you're allowed to do. You don't have to be a lawyer to know that. You just have to watch Law and Order. I mean, every time they knock on the door, some guy's always like, "You got a warrant?" And you'd be like, "Oh, that guy definitely did it." But then they'd get a warrant and they wouldn't find anything, and it always turned out it was the guy's wife every time. So 2 things I learned. You're allowed to ask for a warrant, and your wife is probably the murderer. Lander was disappeared into an elevator and detained for hours without being told why.
DHS put that preposterous statement out that everyone could see is not what is happening on the video, but they didn't tell me any of that. They did take me to a detention room. They took the cuffs off, and I just sat for 3.5 hours in a detention room. Part of what's fascinating is
But they didn't tell you? Like, you're just in there, there's nothing.
Nothing.
That's insane. No one should be stuck in a room for 3.5 hours without knowing what's going on, unless you're at the doctor. I mean, obviously. Also, I'm pretty sure it's a violation of the Geneva Convention to make someone sit in a room for 3 hours without their phone. This is America. You have the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, and the right to play Wordle until your attorney shows up. Guilty or innocent, everybody loves Wordle. It was the Zodiac Killer's favorite game. I know, it's a terrible first guess. We put more time into that joke than any of the jokes. And before we even told it, you were all like, I don't want it. The news isn't bad enough. We're like, we should get Zodiac Killer in there. And Lander isn't even the first Democratic official to be roughed up by federal agents and then detained without explanation.
Democratic U.S. Senator from California, Alex Padilla, was forcefully removed from a press conference with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Video captured him approaching Noem with questions while she was discussing immigration raids. Security for the secretary then used force and handcuffed Senator Padilla after removing him.
I was forced to the ground. First on my knees, and then flat on my chest. And as I was handcuffed and marched down a hallway, repeatedly asking, why am I being detained? Not once did they tell me why.
Why telling people why they're getting arrested is like the main part of arresting. Otherwise, it's just aggressive flirting. You're under arrest. What for? I don't know. Have you been a bad boy? This is what it looks like to live in a police state. Everyone's wearing masks like it's eyes wide shut. And that's prompted some lawmakers to consider legislation requiring officers to identify themselves, and Fox News is aghast.
The quote, No Secret Police Act would ban local, state, and federal law enforcement from covering their faces when interacting with the public. Officers would also have to wear identifying information on them, like name tags. Hard to believe this is real.
We're even hearing reports that they're going to start making every officer wear a, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right, badge. What's next? Let me guess. The radical left is going to make them paint police on the side of their cars. Put big flashing lights on top so everyone knows where they are. And before you know it, they'll have to make a sound like this. Woo, woo, woo. So Trump promised to deport violent criminals, and now he's arresting elected officials. And that's not the only promise he's breaking. He also claimed he'd keep us out of foreign wars.
Tonight in the Middle East, it's like a tinderbox. It's ready to explode. People are being killed at levels that we've never seen before. And that's taking place right now. Why would you be supporting somebody where the Cheney family, the father, killed more Arabs than any human being on earth? He pushed Bush, and they went into the Middle East. This person cannot be a president. We'd have a major possibility of getting into World War III, which will never happen with us.
I love when he wears the big baseball hat, you know, to keep the fun out of his eyes. Forget what he was saying. You could tell he'd govern as a fascist from the way he's dressed. What is it? It's all black, gold tie. It looks like a uniform from a low-budget sci-fi movie. He should be giving orders to an army of alien insects and have a C-3PO ripoff standing next to him named DT-40. We have a major possibility of World War III. Isn't that right, DT-40? Sir, I believe you're neglecting Article 5, Section 27 of Intergalactic Space Law, which states, all right, this robot's broken. Let's get Z2D2 in here. Hey, Z2D2. That was it with that. Those are the two. You know what the Z in Z2D2 stands for? Zodiac Killer. So you heard Trump. We're staying out of disastrous foreign wars, so that's good news. What's up? Oh, there's a clip? Was it a good clip? Well, what do you mean? What do I mean by a good clip? All right, I go like a clip that supports Trump's promise of keeping us out of foreign wars, which is like one of the few things I agree with him on. Oh, it's not that? Oh, man, it's never a good clip.
President Trump told ABC News of the conflict between Israel and Iran, quote, it's possible we could get involved.
He has been inching closer to implying and trying to set out the rationale for the U.S. further diving into this conflict and perhaps providing some military offensive support.
President Trump started referring to the conflict using the term we in a series of social media posts saying we have control of the skies over Iran and we know the location of the supreme leader and could kill him but will not for now.
The president warned everyone in Iran's capital city, nearly 10 million people, to flee, posting everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran with no additional explanation.
No additional explanation. You can't post something like that and then go dark on us. You definitely can't follow it up by holding a press conference at the White House to show off 2 new flagpoles you're installing on the White House lawn. He started out saying he was going to build a giant wall, and now he's down to 2 poles. 2 poles. We did have to pay for it. We asked Mexico to pay for the poles, and we... full disclosure, we bought the poles. You got to give us more information, man. This is like if you got a text from your spouse that just said it's over, and you wrote back, what? Why? Hello? Please. I'll do anything. Talk to me. And then they wrote back 3 days later, check out my new bangs. Now, some of you might be thinking the situation is very complicated, given the tumultuous history of the region and U.S. military interventions in the Middle East. So I'm going to take a few minutes to lay out my very nuanced opinion on the possibility of the U.S. going to war with Iran in a new segment called Seth's Take. This will take a while, so just bear with me. It's a really bad idea. Now, you might be thinking, but Seth, you might be thinking, how can you say that? The Iraq war worked out so great. Well, apparently, I'm not the only one who's concerned.
On Capitol Hill, there is a growing concern about the war between Iran and Israel escalating. Senator Bernie Sanders introduced legislation to stop American involvement late Monday. Another war in the Middle East could cost countless lives, waste trillions more dollars, and lead to even more deaths, more conflict, and more displacement, the senator wrote. There is concern about Iraq Round 2 here on Capitol Hill.
Bernie's right. I can't think of anything worse than Iraq Round 2. Here's a showbiz rule you can apply to this situation. Don't make a sequel to a movie that sucked. Sitting around and considering Iraq Round 2 is like a movie executive walking in a room saying, should we make another Cats? Maybe this time we don't blur the buttholes, we just double down on the buttholes? Let's double down, let's make them a little bit bigger, like slightly bigger cat buttholes. In fact, American military intervention in Iran is such an obviously horrible idea that it's even pitting Trump supporters against each other.
There is a growing divide among the president's supporters about the question of a possible foreign intervention by the United States. Look at this remarkable exchange. We're going to play for you here. Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson on this very issue.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's, it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even. You don't know anything about Iran, so
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country.
Ooh, nice comeback, Ted. Nice comeback. I'm shocked you didn't try to pull a loser says what. I will say this whole thing, I've never felt more like a Roman emperor. I just want someone to feed me grapes while I say, let them fight. It's like watching a sequel to Alien versus Predator called, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Predator is making some very salient points. And here's one of the many reasons the population of Iran matters. It's more than double the population and nearly 4 times the size of Iraq. And I'm not going to pretend to be a military expert, but I don't remember anyone saying the reason everything went badly in Iraq was because it was too small. We need a bigger one to work it out in. The Iraq War was a generational catastrophe based on a lie that caused untold misery and death and destabilized the region. Everyone who said that at the time was proven right, and the same is true now. U.S. military intervention in Iran would be a disaster. Trump's anti-war posture was a con. Yet another reason why, when it comes to the Trump administration,
this person cannot be a president.
This has been a closer look.